been trying to identify the mitzvah of Hoshana, the mitzvah of Arava that was done in the Beit HaMikdash, that they took their Arava every day, the willows that they took separately independent of the lulav. What was the meat and the potatoes of that mitzvah? Was the meat and the potatoes of that mitzvah? And if you don't mind sending to the group that we are on, was the meat and the potatoes of the mitzvah the actual taking of the Hoshano, taking of those Aravot, or was the meat and waving it or banging it, or was the meat and the potatoes the actual placing it on the mizbeach, the side of the mizbeach? Was that the main point of the mitzvah? And what the Gemara was saying, the question was, nowadays, there was an opinion in the Gemara that the reason why we don't take it on Shabbat is because the way the minhag that was established by the prophets to remember the way they did in the Mikdash, since it doesn't really resemble it in the true sense, because it is only we don't place it on the mizbeach, and the main mitzvah, that opinion of the Gemara wanted to suggest, was placing on the side of the mizbeach. Therefore, since we're not, Rabbi Yosef says, Yosef wanted to suggest that our remembrance is not a real exact duplicate or a real of what they did in the Beit HaMikdash, because they actually placed it on the side of Mizbeach and we don't. So therefore, they did not allow us. Good morning, Max. They did not allow us to take it on the Shabbat. That's what he wanted to say. So what was driving him, that if the way we take the Arava today, those Shanot, would be the way they did in the Beit HaMikdash, so then they would let them in Israel take the Hoshanot on Shabbat as a remembrance of the way they did in the Mikdash. But if since they're not really doing it the way they did it, so therefore they did not allow you to take it on Shabbat. But the Gemara now is challenging that Rav Yosef's understanding. And that's what we're up to in the Gemara on 43b4. The last thing that we said, we spoke about the Baisutim. That was a sect, the Baitosim that are mentioned. They were a sect of Jews that were not following tradition. They only believed in the written law. And we illustrated with a story that they once came to the Beit HaMikdash, right? And they saw that the Jewish community had before Shabbat, they brought the Hoshanot. Before Shabbat, they brought the willows that they were going to use for the mitzvah of Hoshanot, of going around the Mizbeach, and they hid them from the Jewish community. Why did they hide them from the Jewish community? Because they didn't want the Jewish community to do the mitzvah. Why did they want them to do the mitzvah? Since it's not written in the Torah. This mitzvah of taking those Hoshanot, not written in the Torah, so they opposed. They held you don't do it, and they wanted to stop the Orthodox community, the traditional community. They wanted to stop them. You know, there are people who have agendas that, then not only do they hold of their opinion, they don't let you do what you understand is right in life. Morning, Ralph. And therefore they try to stop them, and they took the Ravot, they hid it under stones, and because they felt that the Jewish community, because they wouldn't move the stones on Shabbat, because the stones are mukseh, but yet they were uneducated Jews, didn't know that halacha mukseh, and they moved the stones, they got the Arava Hoshanot out, and they actually were able to perform the mitzvah of Hoshanot that year, on that Shabbat. And the Gemara concluded, we'll start from the middle of the piece on 43b4, on the right side, in the middle of that paragraph, towards the end of that big paragraph, we said the uneducated Jews who were on the side of the Perushim, who were on the side of the traditional Jews, the Orthodox Jews, the Orthodox camp, not the liberal other camp that doesn't follow traditions. And They took those Hoshanot out from underneath the stones. Ve'evim HaKohanim, and the Kohanim brought those Hoshanot, those Aravot, those willows. We today take 5, and with Kufum Mizbech, and they place them on the side of the Mizbeach. Lefei she'ena by Totsim Modim Shechibud Aravah. They do not agree that the Chibud Aravah, which Rashi says refers to the waving of the Aravah, they don't agree that Doche et Shabbat. They don't agree that the mitzvah of waving the Aravah, the Rambam says banging the Aravah, they don't believe that, they don't agree that the taking of the Aravah is Doche et Shabbat. They don't, not only don't believe it's Doche Shabbat, they don't believe you take it at all. They hold you don't take the Aravah at all. So Alma ben Atila, we see from this Braita that it emphasizes the taking, the Chibud Aravah, the taking of the Aravah, that we see from here that the taking of the Aravah is the mitzvah. So now that we say that the taking of the Aravah, not the placing on the Mizbeach, is the main mitzvah, just the taking of the Aravah, so the Gemara says to Yufta. So this is a knockout on Rav Yosef's suggestion. The Rav Yosef's suggestion was that the mitzvah of the 5 Aravot, or the whatever they did, how many they did in Mikdash, taking the Aravot, the willows, separate from the lulav, that he suggested that the main mitzvah there was placing on the side of Mizbeach. We see that is not the mitzvah. We see that the mitzvah is actually taking the Aravot. If it's the mitzvah is taking the Aravot, so therefore, now we're back to square one, so to speak. So why in Eretz Yisrael, that when Eretz Yisrael, they know the date of the holidays, right? We know outside of Eretz Yisrael, when the time Sukkot comes, we still, in those days, we did not, the messenger from the court might not have reached us in Babel to tell us when they sanctified the new moon, when they declared the beautiful moon last night. Everyone has to be on top of their game to do Kiddush Havana in general. And they didn't know in Babel, in Babylon, when did they say it was Rosh Chodesh? Was every month has 29 days or 30 days? But in Israel, Israel, they also didn't know on Rosh Hashanah, morning Simon. Rosh Hashanah, therefore, Israel is the only holiday that Israel has 2 days, Yom Tov, is Rosh Hashanah, because it's the first day of the month. They don't also know when did they best sanctify the moon. But by the time Sukkot is the middle of the month, Sukkot is the 15th of the month of Tishrei. So they know already. So if they know already, so the mitzvah of taking the Aravah to remember the way they did in the Mikdash, why don't we take, the Gemara's question is, why in Eretz Yisrael, in the Holy Land, today, if Hoshana Rabbah would come out on Shabbat, the Gemara said, there's an opinion that says it could come out on Shabbat. Why don't they remember the minhag? Why don't they remember what they used to do in the Mikdash? When the Mikdash was around, we had Hoshanot. We had a mitzvah, a biblical mitzvah, halacha Moshe Sinai, to take the Kohanim. The Kohanim had to go ahead and take these willows by the Beit HaMikdash. They would go around the Mizbeach or whatever they did with it, but they had a mitzvah to go ahead and take these willows by the Mizbeach in the Beit HaMikdash. So we should have to remember that, and we should even remember it on Shabbat, that in the land of Israel. That was the Gemara's question. Ela nidchu. So the Gemara's question is, why in Israel if Hoshana Rabbah, the 7th day of Sukkot comes down on Shabbat, why don't they take the Aravot, the Hoshana? That's the Gemara's question. Everybody with me? Again, is it clear? If the 7th day of Mr. Cohen, is it clear? The 7th day of Sukkot, we know in the Beit HaMikdash, they took the Aravah, the willows, independent. We have willows that accompany the lulav and the etrog and the asin. We have Aravot, willows. But then we have willows that are independent, the lulav and etrog, hadas and aravot. Nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with them. An independent mitzvah that was done in the mikdash, that they went around the mizbeach, either they went around the mizbeach with these willows, or they took these willows by the Beit Mikdash. And at the end of the day, after they took the willows, they waved them or they banged them, then they placed it on the side of the mizbeach. But there was a special mitzvah in the mikdash to take in the mikdash to take these willows separately, take them separately, wave them, and the question is, and we know there is a concept called Zeichel and Mikdash. We know when Hoshana Rabbah, when the seventh day of Sukkot does not come out on Shabbat, we take those willows. That's what we do today. We take the Hoshanot. What do you call it? Hoshanot, Aravot, what do you call them? Mr. Cohen, what do you call them? Aravot. You call them Aravot. You take the Aravot. So why is it, but if the seventh day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbat, they will not take them? Why not? The Gemara says, I understand outside of Israel you won't take them. Because you don't know outside of Israel, they didn't know when is the seventh day of Sukkot. But because they don't know when they sanctified the moon, when the Yom Tov began. But in the land of Israel, when they knew when the seventh day of Sukkot came, the knowledge that this is the seventh day should be enough to override any concern of issue of taking it on Shabbat. And we said there's no carrying issue because it was the Kohanim that was involved. The angels of the court, the agents, not the angels of the court, the agents of the court were the ones who actually were involved in doing it. So the question was maybe it's a muksa issue. The Gemara says, but the Gemara is saying, but the mitzvah of Zeichel and Mikdash, remembering the Mikdash should be enough to go ahead and allow them to take it in Eretz Yisrael. So now the Gemara is going to say a beautiful idea why they don't take the Aravot on Shabbat. The seventh day of Sukkot comes on Shabbat. Max, is it clear? So the Gemara says, Ela nitchu. So the Gemara says, listen to what the Gemara says. Kivan, the Gemara says, Kivan da'anan lo dachinan. The Gemara says, since we, outside the land of Israel, we do not, we're now on 43b5, page 5. Ela Kivan da'anan lo dachinan. We, outside the land of Israel, we will not take the Aravot on Shabbat, on the seventh day, to remember what they did in the Mikdash, because we don't know if today is day 7. So, inhu nami lo dahu. When the seventh day of the holiday comes out on Shabbat, they also don't take it, because they don't want that it should look like there's 2 Torah. They don't want the Jewish community to look divided. And if the people in Israel take these Aravot on the seventh day of Sukkot, because they know today's date, and when it's the seventh day, we don't take it because we're not sure. So it looks like, in Israel they keep a certain Torah, and outside of Israel we don't keep that Torah. They're taking the Shana, and we're not taking the Shana. We don't want it to look like two Torah. And people should always remember, we live here in America, they live in Eretz Israel, there's one Torah, not a different Torah for here and then over there. So, by the way, they should know, blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, according to one of the opinions, the way they explain, the Torah says Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Truah, the day of Truah. What does Truah mean? Crying, a day of crying. That's what the Targum says. It means you have to do a crying sound, not necessarily you crying as an individual, but crying that you do a sound that's a crying sound, a broken sound. That's the Truah. We call Truah today, we do that's a Truah, but really, there's the Shvarim, also called Shvarim is from broken, is 2, 2, 2, and then we also do 2, 2 Shvarim Truah. We do a combo. right? So what is that all about? What are all these different breaking sounds, combining sounds? So some understand there's actually a Torah question of what is the sound of the Torah that the Torah is obligating you on Rosh Hashanah. The Torah says a broken sound, and we also know the broken sound needs to be preceded by a Succah, which is a straight sound, and it has to be followed by a Succah. Has to have the straight sound in the beginning, but the middle, within between, has to have the sandwich. What's in the middle? What's in the sandwich? A broken sound. And some learn that the question is, what is that broken sound? So there's different opinions how you fulfill the mitzvah of the broken sound. Some say the only way you break this, you fulfill the mitzvah is if it's a what we call a trua. Others say no, the broken sound has to be what we call the shvarim. Others say no, it has to be a combo. That's one idea in the Rishonim. There's an actual, and according to this opinion, you didn't fulfill your biblical mitzvah if you did it this way. According to that opinion, if you did it that way, you didn't fulfill the biblical mitzvah. Other Rishonim learn no. Any broken sound would you fulfill the mitzvah. And if you do a breaking sound, either this style, that style, except different communities had different style of crying. Mr. Cohen, fascinating. Some people would cry, some people cry, some people cry, do a combo, and you come to, let's say you come to Israel, and they would cry a certain fashion. You come to other parts of the world, they might cry a different fashion, and it looks like there's two Torah. It looks like the Torah is, there's one Torah for the people in Israel, because they do the mitzvah. You come to Israel, you're traveling one year, you hear they do the mitzvah this way. You travel another time, you're a big traveler. And you travel every year, it looks like the mitzvah is done in a different fashion. So it looks like the Jewish community is two different Torah. So in order to unite all the communities, how do you like that idea, Max? They said everybody's going to do the same thing. Everybody's going to do the three ways. We're going to do the trua, what we call trua, we'll do the shvarim, and we'll do the kamo, just to unite the Jewish people. This is a great concern. Right, very good. The breaking sounds, we have to break our heart. Our heart has to be broken. We have to repent. We have to break our ego. And that's the significance of meaning our inside should be crying out. It's a day of judgment. Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment, the time of repentance. So that's what the idea of the breaking sound. And the idea of the tekiah, the long sound, some explain is when let's remember, when you coronate a king, when you inaugurate a king, you blow the trumpet, you blow the shofar, you blow a shofar, like symbolic that his kingdom should last forever. Symbolic, and maybe that's symbolic of the idea we have to recognize Hashem is the king. That's the idea. A lot of the focus on Rosh Hashanah, the focus on Rosh Hashanah is Hamelech, right? What do we say on Rosh Hashanah? Hamelech HaKadosh, Hamelech HaMishpat, right? There's a lot of focus on Melech, right? On kingship, to recognize God's our king. And if he's our king, we have to act accordingly. But I want to bring out the concept of uniting the Jewish community, that it shouldn't look like there's two different. By the way, that's why if an Ashkenaz, comes Sukkot, Chalamoid Pesach, right? There are different customs whether you put on tefillin on Chalamoid. The Sephardi community does not put on tefillin. The Hasidic community does not put on tefillin. The Ashkenaz community is split. Some do and some don't. So if I personally, my custom is my father, Allah Hashem, he put on tefillin on Chalamoid. I would walk into a Sephardi shul, I will not put on tefillin on Chalamoid. I would have to put it on beforehand or afterwards. But I can't be that one guy. It looks like there's two Torahs going on. Nobody's putting on tefillin, and I'm putting on tefillin. Right, Mr. Cohen? It looks like there's it's a different religion? Okay. But we got to be careful. That is the expression, but I would not recommend to follow the Romans. I recommend you, when you buy Rav Moshe Feinstein, follow Rav Moshe Feinstein. Buy Rav Yosef, follow Rav Yosef. I understand the yes, Mr. Peter.
So why then shut work? Why like
Right. So maybe it could be that there it was much more publicized through the Megillah, that everybody saw in the Megillah. It's written black and white, for everybody to see that different communities, based on the situation, the historical situation, because they went to fight in Shushan, they went to fight on the 13th and the 14th. They celebrate on the 15th. The rest of the world went to fight on the 13th, and they rested and celebrated on the 14th. It could be that when it was very clear why you're doing something a certain way, it's very out in black and white and in the open, and it's read and it's publicized, right? The midst of Purim, everybody knows it. All men, women, and we bring the children. No, they read it. They were all in the synagogue, and they got it black and white. So nobody's going to come to mistake. I love the question. No one's going to come to make a mistake and say, "Hey, you know what? I come to the old city and they're reading on the 15th. I come to Tel Aviv and they're reading on the 14th." Everyone understands. What do you mean? You're reading it. It says in the Megillah that this is an open city. This is a walled city. So they're not going to come to make the mistake. But you come to Israel and they're blowing the shofar a certain sound, and you come somewhere else. You come to Spain and they're blowing a different way. What's going on? Is it two Torahs? Is this a new sect? You know, these are modern sect. This is a modern idea how they're adapting to times. That people don't know. It's not black and white. I think Mr. Cohen likes the answer. It's not right. It's not clear to the onlooker, and then they'll start saying, many Ashkenaz shuls, what they do is they have a section on Chol Hamoed, a section for tefillin people and a section for non-tefillin people. They don't have them mixed together as if you're like one cholent, But what's going on? You put on tefillin, you don't put on tefillin. But even that is not, I presume, is not so simple, because still it might have an appearance of these two Torahs here. But again, that seems to be the common custom, so they're not concerned for some reason. But like I said, I once went to a Hasidic place for Chol Hamoed, and nobody. Now, you won't catch anybody with a tefillin on. It was by upstate, by New Square. So I had to put on tefillin afterwards. I couldn't put it on. I couldn't put it on with the minyan. I was stuck. I down with the minyan and I put the tefillin on afterwards. Okay, so the Gemara said. So that's what the Gemara wants to suggest. Since they are not able, because the people outside of Israel cannot take the Hoshanot on the seventh day, so the people in Israel don't take it on the seventh day. So the Gemara says, V'ha Yom Tov Rishon. On the first day of Sukkot, we find Dilididan Lo Dachi. They're asking the question. Outside of Israel, if the first day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbat, right? What are we saying? The first day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbat. We don't take the lulav on Shabbat. But Liditu, right? Today's day and age, we said in the time of the Mikdash, we said they did take the lulav the first day come out of Shabbat. They just didn't carry it in the street. The rabbis did not make their fence, and the first day came out of Shabbat. But post the Beit HaMikdash, the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, we say that the rabbis did not allow us to take the lulav on Shabbat. Yet, the Gemara is under the impression that in Eretz Yisrael, they would take the lulav on Shabbat if the first day came out on Shabbat. That's what the Gemara is asking. The Gemara is under the impression that now, post the Beit HaMikdash, when the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, they know in Babylon, they know they don't take the lulav on Shabbat on the first day. And they're under the impression that in the Holy Land, they will take the lulav the first day if it comes out of Shabbat. But that goes against what we just said. We don't want it to look like two different Torah. You'll be in Bavel one year, it comes out on Shabbat, you won't take the lulav the first day on Shabbat. and because they're concerned of carrying. And yet in Israel, they didn't make that decree. So it looks like there's two Torah. There's one Torah. And I think it's a very important record. We have to recognize one Torah. So the Gemara says, you know what? That they're here in Bavel. They're discussing the issue in Babylon. So they're under the impression that in Israel they're taking it. They told them, no, it's not true. In Israel, they're not taking it either. In Israel, they're not taking the lulav on the first day of the holiday, but we all, because what? Put us all united together. We are now 44A. Mem Dalal Amar Aleph. Right. So now to answer Mr. Betesh's Ralph's question, he asked, by Mincha, some people wore tefillin, so it doesn't look like two different Torah. So maybe you could say like this. Number one, tefillin every day, the mitzvah is to wear tefillin. You can technically wear tefillin the whole day. So the fact that I don't wear tefillin the whole day, but you wear tefillin the whole day, it's not two Torah. Even if I don't wear tefillin, I also agree that there's a mitzvah today to wear tefillin, except we're not on the level to wear tefillin the whole day. Hard to keep the body clean the whole day. But it's not, a very pious person. There was a Rabbi Scheinberg. He wore tefillin the whole day. He wore maybe 18 pairs of tzitzit also. I don't know how many pairs of tzitzit he wore. He wore a lot of tzitzit. He wore tefillin the whole day, what I recall. So it's not that there's two Torot, but it's not that I'm going to say, you have a different law than me. I can also wear the tefillin. Except for whatever reason, we're not, we're not wearing the tefillin. But it's not that you hold that you can't wear the tefillin. But when it comes to the Aravot, in Israel, outside of Israel, you cannot take the Aravot on Shabbat. And if they're taking the Aravot, they're telling you can't do it, and they're saying you have to do it. So that looks like two different Torah. It's not united. So the Gemara says Amri, and this is the actual halacha. But anyways, the 7th day of Sukkot never comes out on Shabbat, to what I recall. Amri l'didhu nami lo dachi. In Israel, they also do not take the lulav on the first day of Sukkot if the first day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbat. Now the Gemara says, okay, Ela kasha hanitar. I have a contradiction. Look at the following statements, two Mishnayot, and they seem to be going in two different directions. Why? The Tani Chada, one Mishnah taught us, it says on the first day of the holiday, if the first day of Sukkot came out on Shabbat, Kala am molichin et leveim l'harabayit. So if the first day of Sukkot came out on Shabbat, what did the community do? Before Shabbat, you had to carry a lulav. You bring it to the Harabayit, because you can't carry the lulav on Shabbat, right? The mitzvah carrying lulav in a public domain is you can't do that on Shabbat. It's like anytime you can't carry in a place where there's no eruv on Shabbat, you can't carry. So what did they do if let's say today is Friday and tonight is the first day of Sukkot. So they would bring the lulav this afternoon, Friday afternoon, to the Temple Mount before Shabbat. So that means they performed the mitzvah. And Tnai Daf, and we have another Mishnah that says the Beit HaKnesset, they brought the lulav to the Beit HaKnesset. So the question is, where did you bring the lulav? Did you bring it to the shul? Or do you bring it to the Harabayit, right? So how do you explain why is it that they brought to the shul, not to the Harabayit? So the Gemara said, how did we explain that? And we answered before, Kan Beit HaMikdash Kayam, Kan She'ein Beit HaMikdash Kayam. We said when the Beit HaMikdash was around, they had to bring their lulav. There was a mitzvah to bring it to the Harabayit, right? There's a biblical mitzvah to take the lulav. They took it by the Harabayit. But when the Beit HaMikdash was not around, we said, when the Beit HaMikdash is not around, then you did not take the lulav by the Harabayit. Where did you take the lulav? Because there's no Beit HaMikdash to take lulav to. There's no Harabayit. You took the lulav to the shul when the first day came out on Yom Tov. So we see from here that even when the Beit HaMikdash is not around, they still took the lulav if the first day came out on Shabbat, right? So we just got through saying now, when the Beit HaMikdash is not around, you will not take the lulav on Shabbat nowhere. Even the first day of the holiday, when Beit HaMikdash is not around, you will not take it in outside of Israel, and you will not take the lulav. You will not take the lulav in Israel itself. But here the Gemara says, it seems that we just said that when the Beit HaMikdash was not around, they brought it to the shul before Shabbat. That means they did actually take the lulav. They did actually take the lulav on Shabbat when the Beit HaMikdash is not around. That is the condition. Again, let's make it clear, everybody.
Yeah, all the people bringing being to the Temple Mount on Shabbat.
They brought it to them up Erev Shabbat, because they're going to take the lulav the next day. So we see that they did take the lulav post the Beit HaMikdash, when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed in Eretz Israel. They took it on Shabbat. So you just told me that since outside of Israel we don't take it, they don't take it in Israel also. So the Gemara says you have that which we said before is incorrect. We're gonna move away from what we said before, and we have to say a different answer. Look, the Gemara says, both those Mishnayot were talking in the time of the Mikdash. And now you have a question. So why did one place take it by the Beit HaMikdash and one take in the shul, in the synagogue? Because the synagogue is talking to people who were not by the Beit HaMikdash. You were outside the Beit HaMikdash. You weren't by the Beit HaMikdash area. You were living somewhere else in Israel. So what did you do with the lulav on Shabbat? The first day came out on Shabbat, you took it to the synagogue before Shabbat. It's not talking post the Beit HaMikdash. Post the Beit HaMikdash, the rabbi said, we're not going to take the lulav on Shabbat. Wherever you are, whether you're in the land of Israel or not in the land of Israel, we're going to make our decree. The rabbis felt, it seems like when the Beit HaMikdash was around, the first day came out on Shabbat, good morning. When the Beit HaMikdash was around, when the first day came out on Shabbat, they did not make offense. But once the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, and that's today, first day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbat, we do not take our lulav. We don't take our lulav. Now the question is, it said that we did take the lulav to the synagogue. So the question is, what was that talking about? That's not talking about when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. That's talking about David. When the Beit HaMikdash was around, during the time of that temple era, so the Gemara is saying they actually, if you were by the Beit HaMikdash area by the Temple Mount, you would take the lulav to the Temple Mount by the Beit HaMikdash. There's a special mitzvah to take it over there by the Beit HaMikdash. But if you lived outside that area, you lived somewhere else, you lived in Haifa, wherever you live, then you would take it to shul before Shabbat, because you can't carry on Shabbat, and you would take it on Shabbat. But that was all during the temple era. But once the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, they said no more taking the lulav on Shabbat, even if the first day comes out on Shabbat. What do? We don't take it. That's what today's day and age also. If Sukkot comes out on Shabbat, we don't take lulav. So that's what the Gemara wants to say. Lo kasha. Idi both Mishnayot bisman Beit HaMikdash kayam. When the Beit HaMikdash was around. And yet, lo kasha. So why is one place you're taking it to the Mikdash, one place you take it to the synagogue? Because it depends where you're living. Can the Mikdash, when you're able to go to one Aaron, when you're able to be at the Mikdash, that's when you took it at the Mikdash. And the other place is Bigvulin. When you're outside the Bigvulin, when you're outside the Mikdash, then what you do? You took it to the synagogue before Shabbat, made your trip before Shabbat, you dropped it off before Shabbat. Then in the morning you picked up your lulav and then you did the mitzvah. So the Gemara asks the following question. Amalei Abaye l'Rava. Abaye says to Rav, Maishno, Aaron, we are on 44A1. 44A1 on the right side. Amalei Abaye l'Rava. Maishno lulav davdina le shiva. We know we take the lulav here in America on the holiday of Sukkot for 7 days. It's a 7-day mitzvah, correct, David? Every day we take, I get 2 Davids on the deal. We got a David Cohen, morning. We got a David Cohen, another, we got Mr. Rappaport, another Cohen. We got a David Cohen and we got a David Batesh. And we know we take the lulav, we take the lulav for 7 days. Now, why do we take the lulav here in America for 7 days today? Because we want to remember there was a mitzvah in the Mikdash. In the Beit HaMikdash, it was a mitzvah to take the lulav specifically by the Temple Mount area for 7 days. If you were outside that area of the Temple Mount in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, you had 1 day of a mitzvah. You lived in Tel Aviv. Not that I recommend telling you to live in Tel Aviv. If you live in Tel Aviv, so maybe there's some nice communities too. But if you live in Tel Aviv, you took the lulav, good morning. You took the lulav 1 day throughout the whole holiday of Sukkot. Only the first day. But once the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, the rabbis wanted us to remember how they did the mitzvah in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple. And therefore, when we take the lulav from day 2 to day 7, we're in, it's not a biblical mitzvah. It's not a Torah mandate. It's a rabbinic obligation to remember the way they did it in the Mikdash. Okay? And the rabbis want us to remember how they did it, not to forget. But when it comes to the mitzvah of Arava, where we take the Hoshanot, the 5 willows, we tie them together, we take them 1 day. Today. We take it, one emotion. We take it on the 7th day of Sukkot, which we call Hoshana Rabbah. Now, but in the Mikdash, in the Holy Temple, they had a mitzvah to take the Aravah, those Hashanot, for every day of the holiday. It was a 7-day mitzvah, a biblical mitzvah for 7 days. So we have 2 biblical mitzvahs on the board. One biblical mitzvah in the Beit HaMikdash, they took that lulav in the Beit HaMikdash for 7 days. We have another biblical mitzvah called Aravah, Hoshana, that they took it in the Mikdash also for 7 days. Yet, the winner that what do we remember very much so? The mitzvah of the lulav. That we take the lulav for 7 days, for day 2 to day 7 is to remember what they did in the Mikdash with the lulav. But when it comes to the Aravah, the Hoshanot, those 5 willows that they took independently, we only remember 1 day. We only take it for 1 day. Why only 1 day? Why shouldn't we take it for 7 days? The same day, the same way we take the lulav to commemorate what they did in the Mikdash, why don't we take the Aravah, the Hoshanot, the willows, to commemorate the way they took it in the Mikdash? That's the Gemara's question. Amalei Abaye l'Rava. Ma'ishna lulav davdina le'shiva zechel Mikdash. Why lulav? We have 7 days from the Mikdash. U'ma'ishna Arava the law of dina shiva zechel Mikdash. Why Arava we don't do for 7 days? So I want to leave everybody with the question to think about it. You walk in the street, think about the Torah, think about the lulav, think about the Arava, think about what we do. And you have to think why are there differences? Why this we do, this we don't do. I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow, and have a great day, everybody.